Welcome, everyone. A lot of new faces today. I'm Jeff Clayton. I am the Collections and Operations Manager at the library, and we've been doing the book club for since 2008 here at Mazel. So we've got a few of our folks that have stuck with us the entire time. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's book is Mao's Last Dancer by Li Cunxin. It was a very big hit in Australia. It was on their bestsellers list for a year and a half. It won the Book of the Year award in Australia. It was on the short list for their National Biography Award, and it won the Christopher Award in the United States. It's been printed over 30 times and published in over 20 countries. Who'd like to get started?
I think it showed how terrible life was in China. I don't know if it was as bad before Mao came to power, but certainly after he came to power. But those people lived, they were constantly starving. That's the part that got me, the weight of life there after Mao came to power. And of course, they never complained. They seemed to accept whatever happened to him. Even after he was free, he never complained. You notice?
I got that also, but what I took away from this book was that even they lived in dire poverty, where even an egg was a luxury, that there was, in that particular family anyway, love. They never said, "I love you." But there was happiness in that family among the brothers. The parents worked from morning, noon, night, went to bed exhausted, but they were a happy family. And the first time he said, "I love you," to his mother, when he was an adult and when he was famous. And that's what I got out of this book. I knew about the ballet and the discipline and what it took, but that's what I got from this book, was the love that came in communist China. They made a little life for themselves.
Well, I recommended the book, and I found it fascinating because I learned about a culture of which I knew very little, particularly the abject poverty that these people lived in. I will never look at a yam the same way again, I don't think, since they existed for months on dried yams. And I noticed that he said that was one of the things that he actually missed when he left China and came here, that eventually he got to miss the dried yams. I thought it was appalling that he was separated from his family so long, even though his parents were allowed to come to this country. Once he defected, he was not allowed to go back for 8 years to see his family or his friends. But all that love with the family that you mentioned, and the love that he had for his friends that he trained with at the ballet, was still there. They picked up kind of just where they left off. And the fact that they were so accepting of his Australian wife, and she was so accepting of his family, I thought was wonderful.
Marilyn, I enjoyed it because I don't read many autobiographies, but it was the first time somebody was explaining their own experience of pre-communist China and how it became communist, but how the family bonds really stayed the same.
Yes.
And as I grew up and was in school, I always thought that was all torn apart in most countries when communism came. But his family stayed really bonded till his parents passed away. It was really something to hear it in the first person. I thought that was a great experience. And that's why I enjoyed the book.
Didn't you just love his reaction to the United States when he came here? It was nothing like he had been told that it was. He expected what, gray buildings and people in poverty, and he kept looking for that as they were driving on the freeways in Houston, and it just was nothing like he expected it to be. And I think that's when he finally realized that the government had lied to him his whole life.
And he had what, 8 brothers or something?
6. He was the 6th of 7 sons.
7. When did they institute the one child? I don't remember when that date
I
was.
think that was during the time of Mao, or around the time of the
Yeah.
Cultural Revolution, the Gang of Four and so forth. But of course, they'd already had all their children by
Yes, they
then.
had already had.
And I don't think that applied to peasants because they needed the workers.
I was struck when, as a child, he went for the training that it was very severe, and he did complain, but he never whined about it. He went with it, and I think his focus was to bring pride to his family, right, and to his country, which was so strong. I don't know if I could have dealt with that severity of training.
Like,
Especially he didn't even want to. It's not like, Mom, I want to be a ballet dancer.
I think that his family background encouraged character. I think he had character.
Exactly.
You know, they were brought up with rules, probably unspoken rules, but they had character. All of the boys had character. They bonded, and they loved each other, and they were all successful.
It was definitely a tribute to his family.
Yes.
One of the things that I found that warmed my spirit as I read it, it was like reading somebody's journal that they had written every day. It wasn't somebody that sat down and said, I'm going to write the book about my life. It was as if he wrote it every day, and you got that personal feeling with no detachment in it. And that was, I thought, unusual. I've read other autobiographies, but this one was, I read the teenager's journal, then I read the young man's journal, but as we went through, he was writing it every day.
I think you're right. I wondered how he remembered so much.
Yeah, me too.
Because
Yeah.
afterwards,
Yeah.
he had so many details.
The other thing that struck me about this movie was the luck of the draw. You know, when those officials came to pick that one little boy for ballet, he was almost overlooked until his teacher said, what about this one? And that teacher then changed his entire life, changed his family's life, changed a lot of people. It was just the luck of the draw, and that happens, I think, in our lives when we meet that one mentor, that one teacher that changes our lives forever.
Did anyone ever see him dance?
No.
In Houston, he was in the Houston Company.
Yeah.
Anyone ever see him?
In his
I never saw him
The
live. but
actual person we're talking about.
If you get on YouTube and put in his name, you can find performances that he has
Wow.
that have been filmed. And I did that when we.
What did you think?
Oh, he's wonderful. He's wonderful.
One thing that I'd like to talk about just for a minute was when he defected. That portion. Did anybody have any comments about that with his marriage to what was her name, Elizabeth? Do you think that was a marriage of true love, or was he just trying to stay in America?
A little bit both, I think. Because when she asked him, did you really love me, or just... He hesitated in the movie. He hesitated and then said, I love you.
And he stayed with her after. He stayed with her, so he must have loved her.
Well, that marriage lasted
Didn't last very long.
a couple of years, was it? We're talking about his first marriage, Libby. Yeah, his first one. And
Well,
they-
I thought she showed great bravery in staying with him when they were kidnapped at the Chinese consulate and forced to stay there until, well, Mrs. Bush was instrumental, Mrs. Barbara Bush was instrumental in helping them get out of the Chinese consulate because they were ready to ship them straight back to China.
It was because
Have you
the
seen
media
that
got
picture?
hold of it.
Yes.
Made it so bad for China that they had to let them stay.
Yes, and I think the fact that the vice president of this country and his wife, who is on the board of the Houston Ballet, went to bat for him as well.
You know, once somebody defects, you really can't expect that country to let him back in. He was.
No, I know
he-
that.
You know, even the 8 years, he was lucky.
He was
go
lucky
back
he
then.
was able to go back, but I just thought it was, you know, so, had to have been so hard on him not to have that close contact with his family, although he hadn't had a lot of close contact because he only went home once a year.
You know, on that point with
Acting, I
him
guess, I'm talking.
defecting and being held at the embassy, that was really disturbing. I mean, the whole issue of propaganda and giving people, you know, the wrong idea of what other countries are like, and you can really see how wars can start. And his life was in danger. That was a very stressful part of the story. And the only thing that helped me was that I knew it was an autobiography, and I knew he survived and he was still alive. Right? So I said, well, this is going to have a happy ending, because I don't really like too many unhappy endings.
Yes, ma'am?
I think it's a tribute to the man that here we are with this book and discussing it and his life and his determination to achieve all that he did. I think it's a wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful experience.
Laura, why didn't you like it?
You know, I knew someone would ask me that. That's why I haven't spoken. I think it's because I've read a lot of books, because I'm Asian, about the whole Asian experience, whether it's immigrating or defecting. And I think in all of the different things I've read, I just felt that this didn't hit the mark quite. Although I agree with what everyone says, it's a heartwarming, the struggle in his life was compelling. As a piece of literature, I guess, I wasn't blown away.
No,
You
not
know,
literature.
I
It's
want to
not
talk
literature.
about it. Yeah. And the
It's
other-
journalistic.
Yeah, the other book club that I'm in, we read Buddha in the Attic,
Oh, I just read that.
which, you know, I don't cry when I read very much, but that book just tore my heart out.
Any other comments before we wrap up our discussion? Great discussion today, folks. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.